Folks, welcome into Blue Collar Bitcoin. We have Jeff Gerson with us today. Before we give him the mic, public service announcement. I have been afflicted by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. I am positive for what some people know as COVID-19 or coronavirus disease. So if you hear sniffles, crackles, any nasaliness, you'll know why. But in all seriousness, been off work for feels like forever, good, Josh. Yeah.
You look so healthy in the pixelated video I'm seeing of you right now. It's hard to believe, but it's true.
It's like it's been a little bit of a run here, cooped up. My wife got it first, then both my kids. I'm bringing up the caboose, just head cold still right now. But I think it's worth saying that I should be thanked for my Blue Collar Bitcoin service, because I am here going hard in the paint to deliver high level, robust Bitcoin education for the masses with COVID. So thank me on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you like. Jeff, welcome in, my friend.
Thank you, fellas. I am huge fans, and I'm honored to be here. Very excited to be on the show, and hopefully add some good color about my background, who I am, why I'm on here, and why I'm a big Bitcoin fan and a big fan of your show.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into all of that. So, I mean, we might as well jump into that right off the bat. So your entrepreneurial endeavors include Capital Logistics, which is the company you're running, which is a shipping logistics company. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the idea of being an entrepreneur, if you had any other attempts before a successful venture, and a bit about how that works in yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I'll try to give you my background kind of quickly. I've actually been thinking about money, and possibly could be called obsessing about money, since I'm about 7 years old. My first venture, I actually went around the neighborhood and signed up people to under contract to let me shovel their driveways when it snowed, so that I didn't have to. Wait! You
put them under contract? Did you actually create a contract at that age?
Yeah, I did. I had a contract so that, because everyone would race out in the neighborhood, and by noon everybody was done, and it was all cleaned up. So I could, in order to not have to race to get every driveway, I'd put people under contract. The only problem was when I showed up at 5 o'clock to do someone's driveway, they were pretty pissed that they had to wait all day to get it done.
Yeah. Hey man, here's the contract. You signed it.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about, money generally, how I was going to acquire it, all that stuff my whole life. I went to the University of Michigan. I studied accounting there. I then went and got my MBA at NYU, where I majored in finance. So it's accounting and finance. I had a brief stint on Wall Street, which not coincidentally for where the world is now and some of the things we'll talk about, actually my job was at Bernie Madoff's investment firm. And
we got to dig into this.
I was on the market making side, which was a legit business that is like similar to what Citadel Securities does today. They were the original inventors of the payment for order flow, and they had an incredible business. Unfortunately, the other side of the business that Bernie was running, on the other floor, I don't know how much you guys know about the story, because it's probably you were little, but at the time, 14 years ago. But we had the market making floor where I worked, and then he was on a different floor, supposedly managing money. And it's just, obviously we all know what we know from the news, but it's just, I remember when I first sold my business a few years later, my partner at the time said, hey, why don't we give some of our money to Bernie? And I knew even then, I was like, nice guy, great family, but let's not do that. And I won't go further into that, but anyway, while still at Madoff, I had an idea to start an outdoor advertising business. I lived in New York City for about 15 years, and I just had an idea. There were all these giant walls with nothing on them, and I started to see a few ads here or there. And one Saturday morning, I jumped on my bike, and I started driving down what's called Houston Street, and I started knocking on some doors. And one guy answered, and I told him, hey, I'd like to, try to put an ad up on the side of your building. And he's like, sure, man, what's the name of your company? And I hadn't even thought about it before that. I was just kind of exploring and thinking it. And on the spot, it hit me, Capital Advertising. So that was the first Capital. And I did that. I ended up having 50 walls and billboards in New York City, Queens, maybe one in Brooklyn. But yeah, so I did that for 5 or 6 years. When I sold that business, I was in my early 30s. And while it was a good amount of money, it was by far, not nearly enough to,
call it quits. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not even close, but it was like the deciding factor was like, okay, I actually now have more money than my dad and I'm 30. So I thought that was pretty cool. But at the same time, I then realized that he paid for college and vacations and cars and all that other stuff for the last 30 years. Anyway, that was the start. So it's been entrepreneurial, business owner, my whole life. And after that, I started doing a little dabbling in real estate, buying some buildings, renovating some buildings in Manhattan, and looking for really a new operating business that I could sink my teeth into. And my roommate, best friend from college, had been an investor in logistics. And he's like, Jeff, I think you'd love it. I think you'd be really good at it. And I went out there. He taught me a little bit about the business. And fast forward a couple of years after that, I grabbed my partner, Michael, who you haven't met yet, but the two of us in 2009 jumped into logistics. And that's a fancy name for freight brokers. We don't own any trucks. We simply connect loads of food from our customers, which are big national grocers or wholesalers of food. And we find the right truck, the right equipment. And we've got 90 people here now. We started just the two of us, and 14 years later, we've got 90 people. We do 500 loads a week. And, I'll get into all the stuff about, how you do that and some advice and all that. But, what attracted me to you guys as blue collar Bitcoin and firemen and, we're in the real world, we're not. One of the things about my business is I've never had outside investors and we have no debt. We build slow and steady.
It's badass.
Yeah. I mean, we went from 2 people to 3 people to 8 people to 15 people, it took years and years. And then from when COVID hit, we had 35 people at the beginning of COVID. And for 2 straight years, it was insanity. And we went from 35 to 95 at the height. And it was just a whirlwind of insanity for 2 years. It was just everybody was shipping nonstop. We didn't have time to get new customers. It was just an amazing, great growth, And, to this day, I may have started this, and I say this all the time, without my partner, Michael, never would have got past year 3. We have totally different skill sets. And right now, it's a total team effort. We have teams of people that each do different things. And I come in my office half the time. I'm like, I cannot believe we got to where we are. And I'm super grateful and humble for I could never do this again. And I'm super thankful for the hard work. And people sometimes ask me, what am I good at? And I, jokingly, I'll say I don't know. But the reality is I'm just good with people and making you feel like you're part of a team and we're going to win this game and I'm going to take care of you to the best of my ability. And, I'm jumping around to different topics, but this year in March, and the world our world came to a screeching halt in March. We saw the recession and we saw the slowdown March 1st. It was unbelievable. And we haven't fired a single person. We know it's going to turn around and we've done fine. It's been a good year, but in terms of volume per the number of people we have we're doing half the number of loads per person that we were doing a year ago today. But still optimistic and know that we're going to all get through this one way or another. So sorry for going on for 15 minutes.
No, love it. Here's what we're excited about this conversation. And I'm not here to knock anybody, but even within Bitcoin, there are so many people in the financial analysis sector, and that's great. But it's when you're making the world go round, when you're running businesses that move things from place to place, you don't have time to analyze markets and stare at screens every day. And we've gotten a number of people that have asked us, how do I get into Bitcoin or get a job in Bitcoin or work in Bitcoin full time? We've gotten DMs like this. And our response is we don't. We like responding to 911 calls. We do this on the side. And it's fine to go do whatever makes you passionate if it's outside the financial sector, whether you want to be a firefighter, run a logistics company, or run and own a winery like Ben Justman, who we talked to on Twitter recently. Like, go do what you want to do that provides value in the marketplace and use Bitcoin as a savings technology. And here's my last comment on this, because I'm on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's something I'm passionate about. I, in a previous life, tried to make my interest, my hobby interest, my career. So I played golf growing up. I played golf in college. I went into the golf business. It was great, but I came to find that the reason I enjoyed golf was because it's something I poured into on the side of my main career. And I think that's kind of how we view Bitcoin. Like, it's a passion project on the side of what we like doing for a living. And I know your trajectory is somewhat similar to that. And so it's cool to resonate with someone like that.
I mean, you're doing a pretty good job of making us all think that this might eventually be a career too. But just saying.
We're here
it's
to
all
capture,
saying, fake it till you make it, you know?
Yeah, we're here to capture the, and yeah, it's been way more successful than we imagined, but at its core, and I think, honestly, what makes this show interesting is I hope it comes through the microphone that we don't need this. This is for fun. This is for us. You know what I mean? And we'll say whatever the fuck we want to whoever we want, because this is a passion project and a pursuit of intellectual depth for the two of us.
And I think that it hits on an important point that I want to make here, which is, it might sound obvious, but it's worth stating that all this, like, especially in crypto, like, you watched all this shit, NFTs, all the nonsense rise over the last year and a half, and then eventually and inevitably shit the bed because nobody was doing anything useful there. Like, creating a rock NFT that is a JPEG that has like 6, dots on a matrix, it's worthless. And everybody knows it's worthless inherently, but this craze gets inherently perpetuated until it blows up and crashes. And the point I'm trying to make here is, like, find something useful to do. If you want to start a business, do something useful. And do something useful that doesn't take a massive amount of capital outlay to start. Find something that you can do that has a capped downside. So, like, for this podcast, for example, I think, Dan, what did we spend to start this thing? We had laptops, some microphones.
We keep upgrading audio equipment, but as it goes,
if we keep doing that, we're going to blow it all anyway. But the point is like, it probably cost us a total of a couple $100. So our downside for this was time wasted, couple $100. And a quick story that comes to mind when I think about this capping your downside idea is Richard Branson. When he started an airline, the guy started an airline with almost no outlay of capital. He negotiated with Boeing that he could rent an airplane for them for 1 year, and that if all failed, he could just hand the airplane back at the end of that period of time. So in that 1 year period, he had an experiment, which was, let's see if I can sell airline tickets. And it was successful. So it, flourished from there. But if that thing had gone sideways on him, he would have been out whatever the rental fee was for that airplane, but at least it was a capped downside. He wasn't going to lose everything. So point being here is, if you want to start a business, do something where you can cap your downside and you're not outlaying your life's worth on the table to lose.
To add to that, my first billboard, the very first deal, I literally gave the guy $5,000 for a 3 or 6 month option. And I said, let me go see if I could sell it. I had a very limited downside. I had a couple businesses that were losers. I was in like I forget, it was an online, it was a online health insurance thing that just didn't go anywhere, capped the downside, got out. And I think, like, if I was going to give some young people that were thinking about starting a business some advice, I would say, like, the upside is so massive in my mind, and not just financially, not at all. Yep. That's not what I have, it was super stressful, and it is super stressful still. Not like it was first 5, 10, whatever years, but the biggest thing I have is complete control over my time. Yeah. I get to pick my schedule. If tomorrow I'm feeling a little lazy, I want to sleep an extra hour, no problem. I can move things, reschedule meetings, work as hard as I want for 4 days, take off on Friday. I think that's just, that's for me. That might not be for everybody, but that is kind of one of the things that, I love about owning my own business. So for me, it didn't really matter if it was logistics, outdoor advertising, or what. It was, find a business that works, that's, you can make more than it costs you to run it. And, for me, that's part of the enjoyment.
Yeah. And it's all about the asymmetry, as you just outlined, Jeff. Like, you're capping your downside. Your potential upside is limitless financially, and growth for yourself, personal growth from just learning how to accomplish something without having guidelines around you. Like it's like working for another company, and Dan and I do this. So this is kind of, I kind of ride both sides of this, but it's almost like bowling without bumper guards. Like you get to fail fully. Like you may completely miss, but at least you gave it a shot. There's a gentleman Dan and I work with who I admire quite a bit because he's started at least 3 or 4 businesses on the side, failed every single time. But he's now finally got one. He's got one going now that looks like it's going to be a winner. And I'm just proud watching him do it because it's like somebody who can fail over and over and keep getting up and have the persistence to try again. That's not easy to do. There's not a lot of people that have the ability to do that.
No, and usually the ones that fail are the ones that ultimately get there. You know, if they're willing to keep putting themselves out there, they'll get it. They'll get there.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
And there's all different ways to measure success. It doesn't have to just be that this guy's making the most money. It could be a variety of ways that he or she, you know, who starts their own business is deemed to be successful.
Folks, SWAN Bitcoin is the place we point friends, family, and fellow firefighters to buy Bitcoin. SWAN is a secure, education-focused, Bitcoin-only on-ramp fit for novices all the way up to full-time financial professionals. SWAN's exceedingly easy-to-use interface enables you to dollar-cost average daily, weekly, or monthly, as well as conduct instant smash buys. Withdrawals to cold storage are completely free and can be totally automated. SWAN wants you to hold your own private keys, and support is one click or phone call away if you need help in that process. Additionally, check out SWAN Premium. This gives members exclusive Bitcoin educational content, discounts on Bitcoin products and services, and privileged access to SWAN events. Normally $20 a month, you can get SWAN Premium for free for the first year at swan.com/premium, and it's free for firefighters at swan.com/fire. All SWAN services can be found at swan.com.
Blue Collar Bitcoin is brought to you by Crowd Health. With open enrollment upon us, what if you didn't have to pay healthcare premiums anymore? What if you could invest in Bitcoin instead? With Crowd Health, you can put aside money for health expenses in your own account and even hold a large part of it in Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes up, you get the upside, not big insurance companies. Pay one low monthly total to fund an account that is yours. Choose your doctors and hold up to 75% of the funds in Bitcoin. If a large expense comes up, Crowd Health will crowdfund the bill and pay it quickly. Stop supporting the broken health insurance system with your hard-earned capital. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use code BLUE now and experience freedom from health insurance by utilizing Bitcoin. Right now, through the end of the year, you can get your first 6 months for just $99 per month. Don't get stuck in a bad insurance plan again. Instead, go to joincrowdhealth.com and use code BLUE to sign up. That's joincrowdhealth.com, promo code BLUE. Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's a totally different way of paying for healthcare. Terms and conditions may apply.
The Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast is powered by arguably the most legendary company in Bitcoin, COINKITE. Use promo code BCB for 5% off select purchases, including the COLDCARD, at COINKITE.com. Established Block 141,000, COINKITE is an industry leader in security and hardware manufacturing. They are producers of the renowned COLDCARD, the world's most trusted and secure Bitcoin signing device or hardware wallet. It's built with a plethora of features fit for Bitcoin beginners all the way up to the most advanced of users. This device is a one-stop shop for your Bitcoin custody needs. COINKITE also manufactures the BLOCKCLOCK, a gorgeous e-ink digital art display piece sitting in the background of every serious Bitcoiner on planet Earth. BLOCKCLOCK can be programmed to scroll through key Bitcoin metrics including price, hash rate, the next halving date, and much more. COINKITE are also the makers of the OPENDIME, a small USB stick that allows you to spend Bitcoin like a dollar bill, passing it along multiple times. Check out COINKITE's entire suite of products at COINKITE.com.
Josh, I to double back, I love your point there a minute ago. Ask yourself with any business or investment that you make, take it down, distill it to the fundamentals. Is it providing real value for real people? And this is part of our road to Bitcoin, quote unquote, maximalism, is as we survey the space of cryptocurrency and we distill the use case and the hole that's being filled by these various digital coins down to the cement, the base of the house. There's really only one protocol we think is adding significant value, and that is Bitcoin. but that's taken a long time to get here. And that is kind of the root out of shitcoinery, is realizing, like, I just read Lynn Alden just released a piece the other day on CFI and DeFi, and basically how it's just one circular giant circle jerk that's accomplishing nothing. And so does this make its way out into the real economy to impact real people's lives? Which is a good segue, Jeff, into when did you find Bitcoin is question one, when and why, and then how is it incorporated in your life and even your business?
Love it. Very excited to answer that. So I first heard about it somewhere, 2014, 15, heard about it, was a little bit intrigued, somewhere on CNBC or in some article, little bit interested, didn't really get it. Obviously, no one does at the beginning, and was thinking about buying a little bit, didn't even know how, where were you going to buy it at that time? And then I just forgot about it.
Yep.
And fast forward however many years later, I'm at Thanksgiving 2018, and my nephew, who's now, I'd say 27, 28, so he was like 24 years old. I love the guy, super bright kid. He was working at a bank right out of school in real estate analyst. We have a great relationship, and he's sitting there with a little hardware wallet showing his other uncle, like, something. He's connected to the computer. He's hitting some buttons. He's showing them. And, my ears perked up. I jump over there, starts telling me about Bitcoin, telling me what this is. He's got this thing on this wallet. It's not connected to the financial system. And just some light bulbs went off. I mean, this was like, holy moly. I got to learn more about this. I heard about it before. He recommended, I think he bought for me the Bitcoin Standard. I tore it up. I couldn't get enough. And so that was November of 18. After that, I later on read more and more books, and obviously 1,000 hours of podcasts and every article I get my hands on. But I made my first Bitcoin purchase in January of 2019. And I just completed 48 straight months of buying Bitcoin and never having sold Bitcoin. And one thing I'm very proud about is, and this part of it maybe by luck, part of it maybe by my age, my experience, I've never bought anything else. I've never bought a single coin. And most people that you hear their stories, they all were caught up in the ICO craze, or they did this or that. Yep. And I'm not saying I'm better than them, but what it just was like, over the years, my family would say, well, why can't you buy a little Ethereum? Why not just a little Ethereum? Why does it have to all be Bitcoin? And I would read about it, and I would look into it, and I would think about it, and then I would say, I really don't understand what it is. How come I don't know how many Ethereum? Why don't we know the total supply? And what does this mean? It's the world's computer. I don't get it. So anyway, I just have never been able to decide to take this new amount of money and put it in anything else except Bitcoin. So, that's my story and how I got introduced to it and where we are today.
You are an untainted Bitcoiner. Dan and I cannot say as such.
We've been violated.
Yeah, we definitely went whoring when we started in this realm. That's for sure.
Now, in our defense, which we've said on this show, neither one of us was ever confused about the primacy of Bitcoin. We
Very
got
true.
that. So in our defense, we understood, but we were adopting the diversified portfolio theory that we had in our stock portfolios of
and the reckless casino theory as well.
And 2017, as we've said on the show, was a different time. There were way fewer full-bore maxis. The education was limited. And a lot of people that pretend like they weren't, by the way, on Twitter, we're not going to name names, were diversified across much of crypto. And now they're dogmatic high priests of Bitcoin only, which we respect and we understand. But it's a different time now. The education's so much better. You can kind of cut through the bullshit of shitcoinery a lot quicker, which hopefully we're expediting for people because
we hope so.
There's just not time for people to fuck around. Like people in our demographic, there's not resources available to waste thousands of dollars on Tron coin. Like with how difficult growing wealth is today and investing, like there's just the margins are lower. You can't miss as much and come out on top. So we're hoping to protect some people from those perils.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, I'm curious to ask you this question because Dan and I have entertained the idea of, like, let's say putting Bitcoin on our balance sheet for blue collar Bitcoin. We don't really know. So I'm wondering a couple of things. How do you do that with Capital Logistics, or if you do? And if you do, how does the accounting side of things work? I don't want to go on long about this because this will probably make people bored out of their mind, but I'm curious how that works for like your company balance sheet, because it seems to get pretty hairy as far as that's concerned. Like,
Sure.
how do you properly do that?
Sure. So first of all, just to qualify, even though I've been Bitcoin only, I unlike some people that are maxis, I obviously, for me at least, still like live in the real world and know that I got to pay my mortgage and
For sure.
save some money outside of Bitcoin. Just
Us too.
God
I
forbid.
think that's come through on this show. Us too.
For sure.
Just to make sure everyone doesn't think, it's 110% Bitcoin. But,
Well, I mean, you should be leveraged too. I mean, I don't know what you're doing if you're not at least 200% leveraged in Bitcoin. Minimum.
yes, of course. What I've done from the very beginning, all my Bitcoin, whether it was personal or through the business, was immediately withdrawn. I would wire money to Gemini and then immediately take it off into a wallet. When my wallet had a similar value on it and it was in my sock drawer to what my house was worth, I said, this might be time to like figure something out here and like not have the seed phrase and the wallet both in my sock drawer.
Yep.
So that's when I discovered Unchained Capital, got the multi-sig set up. Ever since that day,
We're huge fans.
Been sleeping, much, much better. Both wallets are in different geographic locations, that kind of thing. With capital, it's pretty simple. We, my partner and I, make a determination on a monthly basis what we don't need for whether it's distributions or the next few months of working capital. We've picked a steady amount each year, and we divide it by 12 on the first of the month. I can't wait. It's like on the 28th. I'm always like, I can't wait. A couple times I'll do the wire a couple days early, only for it to go down, a couple grand. And I just should have waited. But anyway, we wire the money.
Stories all the time.
Yeah, we wire the money to Gemini. I immediately withdraw it to Capital's vault, multi-sig setup. And it's that simple. Same as, how I would do it with my personal funds. Because it's just my partner and I, and we don't have a board and we don't have investors, there's not a whole lot of, due diligence that needed to go in. It was literally a conversation like, hey, I got this idea. I've been spending a lot of time. I think it's, a worthwhile way to invest some of our excess cash. He was like, I trust you and, I love it. And I'll learn a bit on the way. So it goes there. And from an accounting standpoint, it's just on there at our cost.
Yeah.
We don't take a profit or loss on it.
Okay.
Hope I'm not saying anything wrong. And I'm like, have someone coming after me, like, you owe the taxes on the first part that went up. But trust me, we're underwater, so it's okay. We don't owe anything.
Don't worry. The IRS is happy to not give you any write-offs for the losses you've taken, but they're more than happy to take all the gains. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That's how we handle things with that.
We may be migrating more that direction, but we're pretty archaic. We just pay ourselves. It all goes into Bitcoin, and Josh and I basically play a game every month of who can get the best price on their Bitcoin.
Is it
for that
Smash
month.
Buy or is it DCA? Let's see who
and we
wins.
go back and forth every single month. It's like, all right, dude, this month I'm gonna just set the DCA, and then the other guy's like, all right, I'm gonna lump in, and then the next month it like reverses, But the general principle is it's a beautiful thing, no matter how small your cash flow is, to be funneling your cash flow month over month, long term, kind of set and forget. Even though we're joking, we're buying it every single month with whatever profits come out of this thing. My question for you is, this is quite the environment to kind of have been through, because you started buying in 2019. We weren't that far ahead of you in 2017. But as we've covered, Bitcoin does this thing where it makes you look like a genius, and then it makes you look like an idiot, and then it makes you look like a genius again. On a long enough time frame, it makes you look like a genius, but you kind of have to weather these valleys. What if
the
last...
problem is though that the genius phase seems to be shorter than the idiot phase.
Exactly.
It does.
Exactly. What has perception been like from family, maybe from coworkers, from your partner, as this thing has done what it does and thrown its camouflage on and backed its way into the jungle again?
That's a great question. I love it. It's funny on the way. I've got a group of guys that I kind of got into Bitcoin, and we have our little chat called Team BTC. And like on the way up, I mean, it was so much fun. We're knocking each other on each 1,000. We went to celebratory dinners. I mean, we had the best time. And
Jeff, you should have seen the firehouse in these last couple bull markets. Pure mayhem. And then it's
especially
you can hear
2017.
Yeah,
that was bananas.
Now you can hear a pin
God.
drop. Nobody cares except maybe, I don't know, 6-8 guys that listen every week. Nobody else cares, and they'll all be interested again next time. You know?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like everybody else, when it was at 68 about a year ago today, I was convinced it was going to 100. I could not have bought more and more quickly,
Same here.
and absolutely thought it was going to the moon. Fast forward a year, and to be honest with you, it really all makes a lot of sense now. Like the price right now is not that surprising. And I love, first of all, nobody talks about it. On the way up, I was getting calls and texts from people I hadn't heard from in 10 years. Like they knew I was into Bitcoin and like my advice and how they should buy it and when, is it too late? All this. I'm like, too late at 50. You're just the beginning. It's inning one.
It's a rounding error. Yeah. As Foss would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we all did it, man. We all did it.
But anyway, now at 17, nobody talks about it. I go out nights, weekends, nobody mentions it. Nobody's, and the only people that are talking about it is like they're making fun of me, or they're making fun that they're gonna buy it when it goes under 10, or like, I just heard last night someone say they think it's gonna go to 2. Like that's kind of like, I've gotta believe, first of all, with the negative news and the negative what's going on in both the macro world, the interest rate world, every area of crypto, the fact that we're at 17 or 18 to me is like, wow, we're holding up pretty well. And I'm getting a chance to buy. I'm getting a chance every month to buy a little bit more of what is fixed forever.
Exactly.
I want a little bit bigger piece of this. And I think in hindsight, we're going to look back and this is going to be the best thing that ever happened for all of us.
I think a good way to look at it too is, say you bought it at 60 grand, which, you know what? I'm guilty. I bought quite a bit at 60 grand, 59 or something. But I look at today as like, I'm making up for the mistake, well, quote unquote mistake that I made then. Like I'm buying it averaging down now to a hell of a lot less. So, I mean, you got to make up if you made some mistakes when this thing was at $70,000, like now is the time to make up for it. I mean, certainly don't want to sell unless you want to, harvest some tax losses and play that game. But you definitely don't want to get out of this thing right now. Like this is the time when it's coiling up. And especially like you mentioned, Powell just said he's going to raise interest rates again. And Bitcoin's price was non-affected. Like that's incredible. I mean, there are people chomping at the bit to buy this thing right now because they understand and they have the ability to see forward what this is going to mean. And they don't want to lose the opportunity to buy this thing at 17,000.
And and the fact of the matter is, gentlemen, Bitcoin makes you earn it. I mean, that's the theme from the last 5 years. Like I sent this tweet. It went something like, people that come to Bitcoin to get rich quick leave and reap no benefits. But people that don't come to Bitcoin to get rich quick stay, build, stack, and then they get rich. And that's kind of how I view this protocol. Like it will humble you though, because most people, the three of us probably included, I have to think through your time frame a little closer, Jeff, maybe not you actually, but you get interested in Bitcoin when the price is going parabolic, because that's when it's on MSNBC and it's on Fox and your neighbor's talking about it and your nephew's bringing the hardware wallet to Thanksgiving thinking he's a genius. Like that's when the hype is there. That's when you get interested. That's when you start your learning journey. And for 8 out of 10 people, they're then going to have to weather the bear market, and it's going to be maybe more severe than they expected. And so this thing just has a way of just sifting and just choosing and naturally selecting those who've done the homework to really understand what they own. And that's where, like, you can't blame yourself. We both made huge purchases when it did that shot fake, right? As I would call it. Like
yes,
it went to 60 and then it went back down to whatever 30 and then it went back up to 69. And I was like,
yeah, dude,
seriously,
on the way back
strap
up.
In, like get anything to pin yourself down, because we're going into fucking outer space. And it didn't. But I'm still here because I believe back to the fundamentals of what this thing actually accomplishes. And I know that can sound ridiculous to people when you said, I think it's going to 180 and now it's sitting at 16, but I'm here to say it's going to 180. It's going way beyond 180. It's going to underpin much of, if not the entire global financial system, because it's got no competition. And it's probably the most marvelous innovation of our lifetime.
I second that. I second that completely.
Yeah, Dan, and just back to your pump fake. I remember telling you specifically, I was like, dude, there's no way this thing goes to 60 or close to it, falls back to 30, and then recaptures 60 and then, does what it did. Like, the probabilities for that in my mind were like, this thing's going way over 100 before it stops this time.
Yeah.
It just caught me so offsides.
My favorite cartoon, which I'm sure you guys saw, have seen many times, is the one where there's the racetrack and the window where it's 68 is lined with people, and the window where it's 30, there's no one there. It's like, and I also think like the age-old investing truisms are like, don't have leverage, DCA, have a long-term horizon. Like, this is teaching you that. Like, you have to follow those or you will get wrecked, So it's humbling. It's really, really hard, especially when you're kind of getting smirked at and laughed at by like all the people that never bought it and thought you were an idiot. But if you believe and you've done the work and you understand what we've got here, I mean, I feel like I say this to people, like, and you guys, I think, have said it on the show, but like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how do people not get this?
Yep.
It is crazy to once you like, just as you said, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you can't stop buying it either.
We got brothers going somewhere. Sirens in the background. There, right there. Yeah, I love it. Brothers and sisters on the move.
All day, every day. It seems like where we are.
Yeah.
Jeff, talk to us a little bit about other entrepreneurs that running businesses, and the most effective way to orange pill people in that strata. What is the best way that you found to bring this idea and this message to people that are running their own businesses and are entrepreneurs? Because I think those types of people are probably a bit more skeptical in general.
And have the most to gain too, mind you.
Unfortunately, to be honest, I don't have that many people that I know and come in contact with that own their own businesses. Most of my friends are professionals, whether it be doctors, lawyers, hedge fund guys. In general, the orange pilling came from just, talking about it, explaining what it is, explaining why it's different than all these other shit coins. It's more like selective. Like a few of my closest friends who trust and value my opinion started buying it close to when I started buying it and have held on. And, they'll buy more at times, nowhere near as dedicated and, confident as I am. But they'll ask me my opinion, are you holding? Should I hold? What should I do? I try my best to introduce people to, anyone that I can get to read the Bitcoin Standard. I think is a great place to start. I'll send them to hope.com where, they've got all those resources. I'll send articles, but it's kind of like, you can take the camel to water, but you can't get them to drink.
100%.
I feel like Michael Saylor coming into the space in 2020, the way he did, like he's got such he's like multidisciplinary in a lot of ways. He's got this pseudo philosophical view of the way he emotes this, which is like, especially with Breedlove's series with him, where he equates it to discovering fire and the evolution of man. And that brought me back to like the book Sapiens, which we talk about constantly. Dan and I love the book. Anyway, the point I'm getting at is that Saylor just has a really, really profound way to identify really philosophical ways to explain this that are just beautiful. And I think if I had to choose somebody to try to orange pill people that are maybe at that upper strata, he is definitely the guy to go to, because he's just got such a profound way of describing these things.
Yeah. Wait, I wanted to say one thing about just orange pilling in general, because this is the plight of any well-researched pleb right now, Jeff, and that's you're sitting here thinking this is such an unbelievable opportunity. Like Euphoria is rinsed totally from this market. This thing keeps churning out blocks roughly every 10 minutes. It's being innovated on at a pace that I can't keep up with, even though we do a podcast weekly. it's just the fundamentals are so intact. The use case is brighter than it's been even when we got in. I mean, the use case and the need and the hole that Bitcoin is filling is much wider today than, in my view, than it even was in 2017. But yet nobody's interested. And I think, like, for me, I just had to embrace that. Like, you cannot make or force other people to have the interest and conviction you do. And unfortunately, price will be the great teacher. Price was the great teacher for me. That's when I got interested. It will be the great teacher for other people again. And even when they start paying attention to this at a number far north of where we're at today, it'll still be a great opportunity. And hopefully we'll still be here recording weekly episodes. But that's not an easy answer. You're going to Thanksgiving and Christmas 2022 thinking all these people need to be buying this. And it's just not going to happen. I don't mean to, I give it a shot, and I'm going to keep trying, and you chip away at a person at a time. But in these environments, someone needs to either really trust you or have a unique proclivity to inhale a lot of Bitcoin information when the price is down and everybody says it's a joke. And those two things are far and few between.
I think not only that, but they also need to have the ability to buy when there's blood in the streets, which not a lot of people do, honestly. Like, this is, I mean, the time to buy, like March 2020, was the perfect time to buy. Yep. And again, we're back at that kind of a situation where it's the time to buy. If you are interested in this and you understand it, you should be going full hog on this thing. And before that, it must have been like 2018 or so, the last time you should have been buying that hard. But again, you go back and forth and you never know. We could be at 10 grand in 2 weeks from now. We could be at 30 grand in 2 weeks from now. There's just no way to know. So as we always say, dollar cost average this thing and be careful out there.
In a weird way, I don't mind when it goes down. You know, like, I'm sure you're similar to that. Like, the lower it goes, the more hardened you get in your conviction. I also think that, like, a lot of people just don't care about money. It's not something that interests them. They know money is money. They make it, they spend it, they try to save a little, but they don't really think what it is. And so they'll get it eventually when there's no other choice.
And here's the irony is Bitcoin's meant for those people, Jeff, because the system's overly financialized and complex because the money's broken, right? Like, the money you get paid in is not the money you can preserve wealth in because the money's broken. And so people that don't have interest in money, which is fine, like in some ways that's a great disposition, Bitcoin may be the perfect option for them because it's a place that they can just park their money in day over day, month over month, and forget about it. I think it has the potential to do that. And to in a way, allow people to turn their brain off more to money, paradoxically, if that makes sense. But they'll take years and decades to uncover.
No, well, it's an interesting concept that you have to make your money in fiat, and then you got to make it again in investing. Like, why should we all have to be investors? I mean, I make my money shipping food. I should be able to save it and let it keep whatever it bought today in a year or 2 years. I mean, it seems really simple to me.
The cloud is just someone else's computer. Everything you do online is intermediated and permissioned. Your data is not yours. Opt out by running a private server and take back control over your digital life. Until now, running a private server has only been available to the technical and the wealthy. The team at Start9 has developed an operating system called Embassy OS that levels the playing field and makes it possible for everyone else. Run a Bitcoin node, run a Lightning node, and become your own everything. Embassy OS is the distribution platform open source software has been waiting for. You can download Embassy OS for free and install it on your own hardware. Or you can buy one of Start9's plug-and-play devices. They build reliable products backed up with incredible customer support. Visit start9.com.
The BCB podcast is sponsored by Capital Logistics. Capital Logistics is a freight broker connecting truck drivers and shipping partners around North America. A true blue-collar business that supports blue-collar Bitcoin. They specialize in temperature-controlled cargo, efficiently hauling food, supplies, and other freight nationwide for some of America's largest companies. Capital Logistics is a firm believer that people and businesses should be able to save what they earn without having their purchasing power manipulated by the financial system, ravaged by inflation and currency debasement. As early adopters of innovative systems throughout their business, Capital's excess cash flow is put into Bitcoin every month. If you're someone that wants to work with a company that shares blue-collar values and an affinity for Bitcoin, reach out to Capital Logistics today. Find them online at capitallogisticsllc.com. That's capitallogisticsllc.com.
Yeah, I think Safe is the guy who perpetuated that idea. Like, you have to make your money twice.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it's a shame
he did.
because you have to be so multidisciplinary to even, I mean, you're shipping things. You have to be an expert there. You have to understand everything that's going on. And then not only do you have to do that, you've got to move over to this investing world and have a semblance of an idea of what a treasury is. What is, all of these other assorted financial instruments, and what do they do, and how do they advantage you or disadvantage you? It's a lot to take in. As Dan and I, bonds are one of those things that I think we have the least understanding in. So we both read books on that. And like, you don't realize on the cover, like, a bond is just you're just lending someone money effectively, but it goes extremely deep, and it's incredibly hard to understand because everything's kind of backwards in that world. But I'm just digressing into like how complex this stuff can be. And the typical person who just wants to make it doesn't want to have to learn all the complexity that comes with that.
Yeah. Jeff,
So
let's hear some about capital logistics. What do you do? Give us the skinny on that. And then any observations you have on the market, shipping things all across this great country. Take this wherever you want to.
Sure, absolutely. We got our start shipping produce. I had a friend who was a big produce wholesaler in the Bronx terminal market. So we started shipping, he was like, I'll give you a shot. That was like my first customer. And shipping produce is super difficult. It's you got to be real sensitive with the temperatures, whether it's cherries or strawberries. So like, and then there's all sorts of claims if you're out of that, meaning like you get charged back if the temps are too high, too low, whatever it is. And so we used to say like we're shipping the hardest thing to ship. And if we can be experts in produce, we can do anything. So we did that for like the first 4 or 5 years. Then we made some strategic hires, and we branched out into non-produce, but still temp controlled. So everything we do is temperature controlled food. It's like fresh food, frozen food, cheese, dairy, all that. That's our specialty. We just didn't branch out further because the opportunity was so big. Like I alluded to earlier, the market for all of COVID, it was very, very difficult to get trucks. You got all the loads you wanted, so you didn't even have to look for customers. And then in March of this year, it was almost like the freight world went into a brick wall. And I think it was just right when the world reopened after the pandemic, people just just stopped buying so much of everything that the capacity generally opened up dramatically right away. So while the Fed was really just starting to raise rates, we already felt like we were in a freight recession. By April, May, it felt like a freight recession.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, to give you an idea, we are now like a typical load, let's say from Washington to Texas, we might have charged $8,000 a year ago. It's $5,000 today.
Wow.
Yeah. You're looking at 30 to 40, even 50% drops in a lot of rates everywhere. And now, like, we used to take, we would take all day to book. Like, people would be working till 6, 7 o'clock because there were loads we couldn't find trucks for. Now everything's booked for tomorrow before they walk in the door. So it's like a total difference. Rates are down, customer rates are down, truck rates are down even more, volumes are down. So if anything, like these cycles in freight, they usually say transportation predates a lot of things in the economy. People watch the transports for an idea of where we're going. Definitely in this situation, transports led. Now it seems, we're probably a month or so into where everyone knows that 2023 is going to be a tough year and the economy is going to slow, and everybody's arguing every day whether it's definitely going to be a recession or probably or whatever it is. We're in one. There's no doubt. I mean, interest rates have tripled. Nobody's buying houses. 40% of trucking, shipping things has gone down, at least on the food side. And, people aren't eating any less. So go figure out that, they just must not have the money to buy as much food as they had a year ago. But again, my outlook generally would be, it's amazing when you look at things through the lens of Bitcoin, how kind of silly the regular world looks. I might not have even thought about these things before, but now it's like we hang on every word that the Fed says. We're waiting for the meeting.
Absurd.
It's absurd. And then we know what's going to happen. They waited too long to raise. Inflation got out of control. Now they're raising when we're already in a recession. The economy is going to crash, and they're going to have to make up some reason why they have to backtrack without kind of letting everyone know that they screwed up and went too long. So I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just kind of funny to me thinking about that. The Fed, the people who are supposed to have the most keen outlook on this stuff, are the ones that are literally a year behind, while a shipping company, you guys who see you're on the ground, you're like in the trenches watching this shit. Why are they not smart enough to be watching you guys? I mean, most, diligent investors are probably watching companies like you thinking, okay, they just fell off 40% here. That's not a good omen for the future. And like, how do we position ourselves for that? You would think that people at the Treasury and the Fed would also have that same mentality, but they're watching all these CPI numbers that are it's even worse than that. They're trailing, they're trailing like 6 months to a year, whereas you guys are ahead 6 months to a year. So there's like a 2-year deficit we're talking about here in the actions that should be happening, it's kind of mind boggling that this kind of data is for the most part available to them. And yet they keep making these kinds of policy mistakes. It's kind of, I don't know. It's just hard to believe, but I mean, it's sort of easy to believe in that it's a sloppy government entity that is just doing what it can to prop itself up and look like it's doing the thing that it should be doing.
And has no easy out whatsoever. We don't have to go way down that, but it's the ultimate rock in a hard place. Like, if you don't cause the recession, the consequences on the other end in their mind are probably even more dire, which is just a reflection of how broken a fiat, overly credit-based monetary system is at the centralized behest of policymakers voted in every 4 years. It's a huge freaking problem, and Bitcoin's a catastrophic upgrade, but there's just no easy answer. We do the old put yourself in Jerome Powell's seat exercise on this show all the time, and I don't have any easy answers for the guy. It's not a job I'd want. But yeah, no. I agree, Josh. They should be paying more attention to people doing real, tangible things like moving freight around.
That is, I just want
to. The risking, the risk is how they don't know how bad things could get if they keep playing with this little dial.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you folks batten down the hatches in this environment? Like, what are the tactics? I'm sure you've been through something reminiscent maybe before. As your industry ebbs and flows, what are sort of the strategies as you're heading into a year like next year?
So the other night I woke up in the middle of the night with like lockjaw. You know what that is? Like where you can't open your mouth. So that's kind of how I'm dealing with it.
Just being super stressed.
Super stressed. And like, I'm going to bed thinking everything's great. And I wake up at 2 a.m. I can't open my mouth. And I was in super severe pain from grinding my teeth. But how are we dealing with it? We thankfully have a lot of freight under contract, and the rates we've had have come down more slowly than the truck market itself has come down.
Okay.
So we've had an artificially good year in that sense. And we've squirreled away a lot of money, knowing that next year is going to be more difficult than prior years. We also ship food. So in terms of like what is and what's the first thing to get hit and what's the last thing to get hit, I mean, I've kind of always, part of why I got into this was that it's steady and it's recession resistant and it's going to perform, relatively speaking, better than a lot of other industries. So we're being careful with the hiring. We're still hiring because we have a lot of irons in the fire for next year, a lot of new customers potentially coming on board. The industry is massive. We're really, really good at what we do. I'm sure everybody says that, but like we've got 90 people. Some of our competitors have 3,000. Everyone here really wants to be here. They all work really hard. Like I said at the beginning, they're well compensated. And so like we think we'll outperform even in a shrinking overall freight market. And besides that, we just kind of cross our fingers that it doesn't get too bad, and like everybody else, you just don't know how bad it's going to be. So we're trying to be as smart as we can with our decision making, our planning, how much we're going to spend on different things, cutting this, cutting that, just being careful with raises and whatnot, having some difficult conversations with people. But overall, like I've always had, and the people here, we have an optimistic view on the economy generally, people's willingness and need to spend, and we're gonna get through this.
Jeff,
like we have to.
I want to round back to something you mentioned earlier, that you had worked around Madoff back in the day. And I want to bring that back to current events, which are the next, fraud that we're all going to watch burn, hopefully burn really, really well in the Bahamian prison. And we had sent you these questions before he got arrested. It's funny that I think I wrote, should he be in jail? And you were like, yeah, absolutely should fucking be in jail. Well, now he's in jail, and it doesn't sound like he's liking it too much. Any thoughts, any ruminations about SBF, this whole clown show that he perpetuated, and how that has echoes of Madoff in it?
Yeah, and again, this kind of comes back to why I think the price that we're at now isn't that surprising, because you've got just so much fraud.
Yeah.
My quick and dirty on this is I never really paid that much attention to FTX. To me, it was just another exchange, just like
right. I think we were all in that position. I didn't ever pay attention to it. I never used it, but whatever. It's an exchange.
Yeah. And then, then next thing you know, the NBA officials had it here. A stadium, an arena was named after it. Tom Brady and Steph Curry.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's half the politicians in DC have FTX on their shirts they're walking around with.
Yeah. So, as a real business owner who's done this, and it took me 14 years to get to where we are, I'm always skeptical that anything could be that easy and that big and that fast. And it's just, I always looked at it as, partially not interested in FTX and in SBF, and partially in disbelief that they could really build something this big, that fast. Again, it comes back to having only ever bought Bitcoin and thinking everything else is just full of shit. How, you're making money because other people are buying and selling things that ultimately I don't think have any value. So it's not surprising that we are where we are. I'd like to think, that Coinbases and the Binances are running a real business, that, they are making money because the industry exists and people want to buy and sell these things just like they want to buy and sell stocks, whether or not they're ultimately all going to zero. That's okay if that's the business they want to be in. I am shocked a bit that, anyone, as a human being that tries to do the right thing and, run their business the right way, it is always shocking when you see a fraud of this level and magnitude. How could anyone be this insane and this, demented to come up with this level of scam?
So brash. So absolutely brash about, and then not only to do it, but to show up, what was it, 6 months ago when BlockFi was blowing up and he was the savior. He was the JP Morgan. He was, handing charity to all these companies and saving the crypto market. And he knew the whole time he was a complete and utter sham and fraud. To just the level of, God, I don't even know the word for it. The level of just ridiculousness.
Yeah,
to do that. It just blows my mind.
It's out there, man. It really is.
Yeah. A buddy of mine I was on the phone with him earlier today, and he was asking me a little bit about it. And he couldn't even comprehend. I was like, just imagine you sent $100,000 to Vanguard to buy Microsoft, and instead of buying it, they just took your money and bought a house with it. That's how brazen this was.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Right. And how overt it was. People saw Alameda. When it was showing up on the what was that, the wires, or people were sending money to FTX, and then it was literally outwardly there that the money was headed straight to Alameda.
It's even worse than that too, because Alameda was paying off debts that they had incurred, just having screwed up in their trades so badly. So they were basically bailing their ship out with your money.
Yeah, I think there was you would send a wire to FTX, and the wire instructions would be to Alameda. Something
crazy.
that ridiculous. So
yeah, it goes to
it all
show.
has to just burn down, right? It all has to just burn down, and Bitcoin will be standing at the end, and wherever that price may be, it'll be, and we'll just accumulate it.
We're watching the forest fire burn away burn all the bullshit down, and let the animals flourish that survive.
I would just prepare people for the fact that, if you're strengthening your conviction, you're lucky enough to be strengthening your conviction in a bear market like this. Prepare for this not to be the last time this happens. It's going to happen again. I don't know what form or shape it's going to take. But anytime you have momentous discovery and innovation, you have a ton of bullshit riding its coattails. If Bitcoin does anything remotely close to what we expect over the next few decades, a lot of parasites and leeches are going to try to suck some blood out of it, and it's going to get overinflated, and it's going to crash down again, and it's going to be virtually, back to our 3 journeys this last cycle. It's impossible to predict where the blow off top is and what it's at. I mean, you could have had the blow off top this cycle seriously, when you understand like the scarcity mechanics and the supply shock mechanics of Bitcoin, you could have had a blow off top at 190 grand, just as easy as you had it at 69. And there are risks to waiting on the sideline too. Like Bitcoin is one of the few, and maybe this is just me being a total idiot and saying this time's different, but because of the uniqueness of Bitcoin's design with totally inelastic programmatic supply and what we suppose is going to be massive demand, it may be one of the few assets that's totally worth FOMOing into. Because if you sit around waiting for, right now is a good, if you're sitting around waiting for 2,000 because your buddy said it's coming, maybe it's coming. I don't know, but this thing could be at 58 pretty quickly too. So just start learning, start stacking,
I think next time it could go super fast. Like you just don't. And then I also believe that with this shakeout, more and more people will get, like, as it continues to inch back up, they'll still be skeptical. Oh, it's at 22. I'm going to wait till it goes back to 17 to buy. It's such human psychology. No one wants to buy it because it's going to go right back down, and it's going to be fun to watch. I'll tell you, the next, especially with the every day we're getting one day closer to the next halving. So, it's going to be a very fun and interesting next 16 months.
On the topic of, Dan, you mentioned new technologies always bringing bullshit. The snake oil salesman originated back in the day when railroads were new. So it enabled people to move from town to town much quicker than they ever could before. So the snake oil salesman originated when the railroads enabled mobility at a much faster pace because people could just jump from town to town selling whatever bullshit salve or, cocaine in a box that made you feel better. That shit that's where the snake oil salesman came from, the technology of railroads. And so, this is just 200 years later, we have the new technology that's enabling a whole new breed of snake oil salesmen. Don't be taken.
Jeff, what's the craziest, most challenging thing you folks ship? Like what's part of your business where you're like, man, if people knew how complex or involved doing this thing is, what is that thing?
You never believe how complex and just to ship cherries is. That's like when you get a load of ice cream actually, but we don't do that much of it. But ice cream, like the whole place, like, when we used to have people here, at least it would like get quiet, like, holy shit, we have an ice cream load on the board.
Dude, nobody respects the ice cream, man.
Yeah, if you don't keep that frozen, if you don't keep that exactly frozen, and what else, what else used to happen? Like when we first started years ago, we'd be shipping like a load of tomatoes, and the guy on the other end of the phone was like, you'd have to check in with them every 6 hours and give them an update on where the tomatoes were and like what color they were. And it was like, if the tomatoes were late, like someone was going to die, and I was like, dude, we're not transplanting a liver here. I mean, it's a freaking load of tomatoes. Relax, but yeah,
these are just things you don't think about. You go to a grocery store and you walk around, you pick up all this produce that is perfectly ready to go. And you don't appreciate all the work it takes to get from all the different people that are getting all that shit there from like South America right now, most likely. Like all this stuff, all this fruit is all coming from down there.
Yeah, a lot of things come in through Mexico, through the Arizona border. So we're shipping a lot out of Yuma, Arizona right now, and it moves throughout the year. Like we just closed up shop in Northern California. We're in Arizona, but like cherries in particular are a high value product. There's a lot of eyes on it because they don't buy as many loads of it. So you're talking about it per truckload. This summer was like around $150,000 per load of cherries.
Holy shit.
Not that we don't buy the load, but if something happens to the load, we buy the load.
It's significant. So, I this is a random anecdote, but I was watching this documentary about cruise ships and ships in general. And they had this section where the guy that's in charge of the food stores on the ship, you know, the day of, they're bringing in all the food for the voyage. And it gave me a feel for how demanding and how much of an asshole these people in the food industry can be. And understandably so, because it's like just in time, got to be perfect. But I remember like somebody brought in this load of pineapples that wasn't right. And you would have thought that this truck driver killed his dog or something. I mean, this guy went absolutely ballistic. Do you put up with some of that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, that times 50. I mean, we have, everybody thinks that their particular load of food is the most important thing of all time. We also get like some real shady, like you'll get like strawberry shippers. You just know at the end of the season, they're loading stuff that's got not nearly enough shelf life. And then when it gets to where we're taking it, there's something wrong with it. And like, there's depending on who the customer is, you'll have a battle. Like they'll try to blame it on us. Whereas the good customers always know that it's the shipper's fault, not the truck's fault, you know? But like, there's just shady people everywhere. So you gotta watch out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a generational question I want to ask here. I don't know how old you are. We're in our mid-30s. Whether it's Gen Z, millennials, boomers, Gen X, each generation has its blind spots and then its uniquenesses that allow us to see that allow it to see this asset class. How do you sort of view your peers in your generation? What predisposes them to see it, and then what blinds them from being able to see Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly my generation is more receptive than someone much older. I'm 52. I think that part of the reason I got it quickly and saw it, you know, so brightly was from my interest in money for as long as I can remember. So being interested in the concept of money. And, you know, one thing that I'm sure you guys experienced also is right when you started looking into Bitcoin is when you realized you had to go back and learn all about fiat, right? You never even thought about that. So to understand this, you have to understand that. I think for the most part, most of the people I know, the resistance to adopting, accepting, seeing it is that they don't want to see it and they don't want things to change. Most people I know are very successful, and the system as it is has been very good to them. So
interesting.
They don't want anything to change. They want the Fed. You know, most people I know, inflation is here, inflation will go back down. And then once inflation goes back down, they'll lower and the economy will come back. And it's just a cycle that can go on forever. They don't think that this is blowing up one last final time, whether it's next year or 5 years from now. They're all mostly under the impression that all is actually pretty good.
It kind of reminds me of that scene in The Matrix, the original one, the only good one. When Morpheus tells Neo, he's like, most of these people are so ingrained into the Matrix that they'll protect the Matrix. And that's almost exactly as you described, you know? And I think counterintuitively, or intuitively actually, most young people kind of feel like they got the short end of the stick these days, especially in their 20s, maybe early 30s or so, like not as many opportunities. They got, you know, a shit sandwich of debt hanging over them from college, and they're working as a barista at Starbucks.
Houses are totally 50%.
Exactly. And you're totally okay with burning the system down when that's your situation. So, that's kind of the situation, that paradigm difference between the two generations, I think, is there's a lot of, and sure, there's people that have the detrimental effect of like just not being successful in the older generations as well. But I think that's the major catalyst and major difference between these generations as they move on, you know?
I do think, and I know we would all agree on this, it is equally important, though, on both ends of the spectrum. So there can be a propensity to kind of like pick on the older generations, like, oh, they cherry picked all the good stuff, but they're potentially in for it too. Like there's a lot of people that are retiring. Let's say they're 65, they're retiring on a nest egg that they think is going to be enough. And it very well may not be enough. And that person is extremely vulnerable and in need of a solution, which even in a small allocation size, maybe a 1 to 3% Bitcoin allocation in your set nest egg that you're reliant on could make the difference for you. So there's vulnerabilities on both ends of the spectrum just because the whole as we've said, the whole thing's built on sand and has the potential to either seep away or erode away quickly. But you're right. Until people either see something shiny or feel the pain, they're not incentivized to move towards this new thing. That's, mind you, very complex and hard to understand.
Yeah, and look, I think the 65 and older crowd is at the biggest risk. I mean,
yes,
they think they're in bonds that are safe. Put aside how poorly they've performed this year, but if you buy a bond at 4% and interest and inflation hangs out at 5 or 6, you're going to lose, quite a bit of purchasing power every year. It's going to go fast.
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff, you have some real estate interests, right? Or am I?
I do. Yeah.
What's your, as we close up here, what's your thought on real estate and that market right now?
Well, I certainly would be, I wouldn't want to be owning office space in New York City. That's for sure. That would be, you're hearing all the time about, like, people are saying, like, it might level off at 50% occupancy and not actually ever come back. Look, I think that the really smart, hardworking people that really dedicate themselves to real estate will find opportunity, and if they're not over leveraged, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the people that are liquid and know what they're doing. And just like people are going to eat, people have to live somewhere, and maybe rents are going to come down 15% in a really bad scenario. But I think that the smart people make the right purchases. Or I have a friend who does real estate for a living, and every property that he owns, he immediately put on long-term debt. So he's got 7, 10, 15 years of fixed rate debt. He's not at risk. But a lot of people that, went into something and took a 3-year loan thinking that they were going to get the rent rolls up and get the income up, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I think it's like anything, some people will do great and some won't. And I think it's probably the second best asset class out there, far, far, far behind Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Great. Jeff, give us a handoff to yourself, Capital Logistics. And it was a pleasure joining you or meeting you here.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to thank you guys again. This was really awesome. It's an honor to have been here. You guys are great. I hope in wrapping up that, if I could help, just even a few people see something or understand something that they didn't, I would feel like this was a success, at least from my end. You guys obviously.
We enjoyed it.
You guys always add a ton of stuff. I mean, Capital Logistics, you can find us on the web, capitallogisticsllc.com. My email address is jeffg@cap-log.us if anyone wanted to ask me anything or have any questions or anything. Not that active on Twitter, used to be, but I leave that to the really smart guys like Dan and Josh, you guys, and Lynn and Sailor and Preston.
Well, if we need any cherries shipped, an entire truckload, we know the guy to go to, and make sure that, it doesn't get all fucked up on the way.
Yeah.
Because that's a $150,000 mistake right there.
Yeah, Josh, I'm thinking if we have a couple $100K sitting on the balance sheet, maybe we'll just ship the 3 stations in our town a fresh load of cherries. And it better be fucking perfect, Jeff, by the way. It better be absolutely squared away, or we will send that back to New York. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jeff. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.